Hey guys, welcome to Knockers on the Bottom. I'm your host, Jay Mill, Jay Miller if you like. So let's get into it. So it's Friday, it's prediction time. It's also time to take a look at some of the keys to the game and people I'll be looking out for. So I'll give you a couple of keys to the game. So my first key to the game is the Cowboys need to make sure to be very physical with the Saints. I feel like if the Cowboys offense, like I highlighted yesterday with those three guys in the middle, Tyler Smith, Cooper Beebe, Zach Martin, if those guys can get on a roll and handle the inside of the Saints offensive line and also get up on the second level and get to Demario Davis and not allow him to be clean and run free, I think the Cowboys should have some success in the running game. Not necessarily having to go for 170 yards or whatever, but keeping the Saints honest, letting them know, hey, we're going to come here, we're going to punch you in the mouth, and it's not going to be one of those days where we're getting 2 or 3 yards per carry. We're going to be kind of hitting you guys and beating you down and leaning on you all game long. And then from that, I think the play action pass will be a great weapon for the Cowboys once they get the running game going. My second key to the game also has to do with offense. This has to do with Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, basically your perimeter group, and the biggest key, who's going to fill in for Jake Ferguson. He's going to be out this game, I think. He's been trying to make it back, but I think the Cowboys will play it cautious. It's very early in the season. No need to rush him back here. Got a lot more games to go. So the first thing is going to be who on that tight end group steps up to take care of some of that load that Jake Ferguson would have. Personally, I'm so sad to see that Jake Ferguson is out this game because I do believe this would have been a game where he could have really exploited that Saints defense. Like a good tight end is a matchup nightmare for what they're trotting out there. They have, a small cover safety in Tyrann Mathieu. Their linebackers are good, but I think Jake Ferguson would have been able to really do some damage here. So it'll be up to Luke Schoonmaker. It'll be up to Hunter Lipke. It'll be up to Spanford. Those three guys, maybe you can kind of push them all together and create a Jake Ferguson. Maybe the three of them can take a small piece of Ferguson's game and give you a little bit each to make up for the loss of him. But it's also going to come down to if Marshawn Lattimore is playing, and CeeDee Lamb's matched up against him certain times, and Brandon Cooks needs to win. When CeeDee Lamb moves inside to the slot, he needs to win. He can eat up Taylor quite a bit. Also, Brandon Cook's speed, I would use that to test Marshawn Lattimore's calf there. Make that guy run around, make him chase that 4.33 speed. And then, most importantly, Dak Prescott needs to be on his game this week. He doesn't need to have 300 yards or 350 yards, but he just needs to keep the team moving and keep the chains moving and keep us in good down and distances. So whether that's the running game working in concert and getting 4 or 5 yards on first down and keeping us in 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5, and then letting Dak work from there using the movement that we use, putting CeeDee Lamb in motion, and handing him the ball, or Brandon Cooks and handing him the ball, or maybe using that to run a wide receiver screen. You get CeeDee Lamb in that same motion that he gets when he hands the ball. You get the tight end released on the outside and the guard released on the outside in front of him. You get Brandon Cooks coming the other way so that they think maybe it might be a reverse, and then you turn and throw that screen to CeeDee Lamb with a couple of blockers in front of him and get that game going. So I do think our perimeter group is where we're going to have to win this game. I actually think Dak Prescott has a really nice matchup this week. The Saints defense is kind of one of those defenses where they show you what they're doing pre-snap. There's not really much disguise to what they do pre-snap. And what they do pre-snap is usually what they do post-snap. So for a quarterback like Dak Prescott, who's been in the league for a long time, he's seen all these different defenses. You give him a defense where you're not really going to disguise anything, and he's going to know what he's seeing right away. And when he goes post-snap, it's still going to be pretty much the same thing that he saw pre-snap. I believe he eats that up all day long. The third key to the game, I believe, which is going to be the most important thing when it comes to our defense, is going to be those linebacker guys. So last week I thought it was really going to be the defensive line, defensive tackles, and they're still very important, to every game. But I thought the Cleveland Browns would definitely try to attack the Cowboys via the interior, and they did, but the Cowboys didn't allow them to ruin the game in that way. So they tried to attack the Cowboys that way, but our defensive tackles were up to the challenge, and our linebackers played very downhill. This week, it's going to be a completely different type of challenge. I think the Saints are actually going to try to get out on the perimeter a lot. They love to run screens. They love to run wide receiver smoke routes, and I think a lot of times they're going to run screens to the tight end. They're going to run screens to Taysom Hill. They're going to run screens to their wide receivers. They're going to run screens to Alvin Kamara. So if you want to see how those linebackers flow through the trash, and because this is a team that runs screens so often, they're good at it. So it's not like a team that's running some screens and all of a sudden you're going to get flags for a illegal man downfield or, things like that that'll bring the play back. The Saints have run so many screens and they're so good at it that they're going to have blockers out in front of Alvin Kamara. And it's going to be up to our linebackers to, get out there, knife through the trash, bring that guy down. Our cornerbacks are going to have to tackle our defensive linemen on the edges. Someone like Micah Parsons, he's going to have to get out there, and he may not get the flashy play as far as getting the tackle or the tackle for loss, but he needs to blow the thing up. Make sure that your linebackers can get there. Same with DeMarcus Lawrence. They need to blow those guys up. Make sure they can't get to the edge. Make sure they turn it back in and flow to your guys like DeMarvion Overshown and Maris Leafau and Eric Kendricks. The good speed and power that the guys have in the linebacking core. The Cowboys are going to be challenged in that way this week. Those are my three keys to the game. Now on to some predictions. So I do predict that the Cowboys will have more rushing yards this week than they had last week. Last week, they were just a hair over 4 yards a carry, which is kind of right where I predicted them to be. This week, I think that they'll actually be maybe around 4.3, 4.4. So I think the running game will improve this week. But I do think they rush for more yards than they did last week as well. So last week they finished just over 100 yards. This week I see them more in the 120, 130 range against the Saints. So that's my first prediction. I think the Cowboys' run game will actually be pretty well. My second prediction is CeeDee Lamb has his first 100-yard game of the season. If you want exact numbers, I see something like 9 catches for about 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. Maybe he'll get them both through the air. There's also a possibility that he gets 1 on the ground, 1 through the air. We'll get into the red zone, get a little bit creative. So that's my second prediction. I actually think the Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott are going to be more on the same page this week than they were last week. Now, my third prediction, Brandon Cooks also scores a touchdown, and he has over 75 yards receiving. I do think that he's going to get his fair share because I do believe the Saints will try to keep a safety over CeeDee Lamb at certain times, or they might try to bracket him. Not that that really works. I mean, people have tried that all this time, and it doesn't matter. CeeDee Lamb still eats. He still gets his. But when they do try that, that's going to leave someone like Brandon Cooks with one-on-one. And from there, he's going to be able to eat that coverage alive. So I do think he scores again. I think he has over 75 yards. Now on to the defensive predictions. I actually think the defensive line is going to end up in about a similar sack total to last week. Now, the thing about it is it's going to be similar in the sack total. It's going to be different in the way that they get it. So a lot of times Deshaun Watson was holding on to the ball. He was trying to get outside of the pocket, and he actually got some rushing yards. I believe he rushed for over 35 yards. So he was, using his legs to get there on the ground, but he didn't have the awareness to make some of the throws. Even though he didn't have many spaces to fit the ball, it's the NFL. Sometimes you just got to let it go. I think it's going to be a little bit different with Carr. I think the Cowboys are going to confuse him a little bit more, and because he's not as fleet of foot to get outside of the pocket, you're going to get the sacks, but you're going to get him without the rushing yards. You're going to get him with Brandon Carr and Derek Carr. I'm sorry, I didn't mean Brandon Carr. Old Cowboys cornerback just living in my mind. No, Derek Carr. He's actually going to get sacked in the pocket. I actually think this is a game where Osa Odighizuwa gets on the board with a sack. I also think that Phillips gets on the board with a sack. I think Micah Parsons has multiple sacks in this game. I think that Saints offensive line, when it comes to the drop back game, can be had. I also think that's why we're going to see so many screens, because they know, hey, if we drop back, 40 times and don't screen at all, the Cowboys might have 12 sacks. So we gotta mix in some screens there. The Saints are probably going to screen us 8 to 10 times this game, but that also means that there's 30 other times that is going to be a traditional drop back game or a bootleg game, and that plays right into the Cowboys' hands as far as what their strength is on defense. Also, as far as defense is concerned, I actually think Kalen Carson, the rookie, prediction that he gets his first pick this week. I think one of those times where we get through and we have pressure in Derek Carr's face and he just has to unload it because he can't run anywhere to get rid of it. Kalen Carson drives on the ball, but unlike the Browns game, he actually holds on to it this time. So I do think that is another thing that will happen for us as well. Now, on to the score and results. So I do pick the Cowboys winning. The score I have is somewhere in the neighborhood of, 38 to 21, or 38-24. I actually think this is going to be a higher scoring game. Even though I think the defense is going to get plenty of sacks, I do think there's just not too good of a way to hold down Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill and Jawan Johnson and all those guys for the entire game. Like Rashid Shaheed. They have a lot of weapons. So I feel like this is actually what their new offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak, who worked with the 49ers last year. You're going to see a lot of different things than the Saints have shown in the past. You're going to see more of that 49ers, that Shanahan style of offense, which is actually a Kubiak style of offense because his father, Gary Kubiak, was one of the innovators of that offense in that running game. He helped them in Denver under Kyle Shanahan's father, Mike Shanahan. Gary Kubiak was the coordinator over there, helping get that running game going. And then he ended up, having his own coaching tree. He ended up going to Houston and coaching over there for a little while. So just to give you some little backstory. So Clint Kubiak is a really good offensive coordinator. He's probably one of those guys that in a few years he will be a head coach. He'll be one of those innovative head coaches that people love to have because of his movement, because of the motion, because of the creative run concepts, because of the edge game, the screen game. So the Saints are going to present some offensive challenges. Don't get too leery if your Cowboys go down early because I do think the Saints are going to put some points on. So we're probably going to see one of those high-scoring AT&T Stadium games, Cowboys home opener. You know how it goes. And the Cowboys are at home. They score a lot of points. Probably will remind us a lot of the Seattle Seahawks game last year where it was just going back, forth, And then at the end, the Cowboys prevail. They pull away. But I think the Cowboys pull away a little further than they did against the Seahawks. It actually came down to the last drive with Seattle. This game, I think the Cowboys pull a little bit further away just because of the talent gap. I think their defense, even though that offense is going to score some points, I do also believe that defense is going to get some stops, and I do believe that defense is going to force a couple of turnovers, which will allow the Cowboys some short fields. But unlike last week where they were playing that very stout Browns defense, and they still put up 33, but if they were on their game, they probably could have matched New Orleans last week and put up 47. So I do think this is one of those weeks where they just capitalize on just a few more of those drives and put them in the end zone instead of kicking field goals. So that's my prediction. Cowboys 38, Saints 24. It wouldn't surprise me if it was, 38-17, something like that. But that's all I got for you guys. Thank you for tuning in. This has been your host, Jay Mill, Knockers on the Bottom. You can hit me up on Twitter at JMillerIYL. That's J Miller if you like. You can also, hit me up via email, knockersonthebottom@outlook.com. Again, that's knockersonthebottom@outlook.com. If there's something specific you want me to cover, you can hit me up there. You can hit me up in the comments. I'll take them all, answer any questions. But thank you guys